Greetings. I'm Akrama Muhammad, the founder and director of the Pieces Collective, and I wanted to thank you for tuning in this evening to Wisdom, Wellness, and Wealth. Today, we are having a repeat of one of our most popular shows on farming and gardening. It's March, and that is starting to be the end of winter, and it's also the beginning of gardening. So we're happy to be here to share with you some of the tips for gardening and for you to listen to our expert speakers so that you may start your own home garden. I just wanted to mention that special order number 15, which was ordered in 1865, right after the Civil War, and what we commonly know today as 40 acres and a mule, was brought about through a question that was asked to ex-slaves right after, as the Civil War was ending, which was, what do you want for your own people? And the answer that was given by the ministers at that time was that we want land. The way we think we can best care for our people is to have land, to till it and work it with our families and our community. And so that's where the 40 acres and a mule came from. But since that time, I believe in 1920s, 90% of the farmland, black farmland, was taken from them either through nefarious legal ways, terrorism, and back taxes, etc. So farming is very important. And I think today we need to look at that, and we can start very simply by having a nice garden in our backyard, which is what the Pieces Collective has done. So we hope you enjoy this episode and tune in to us every month, the third Wednesday of every month, for Wisdom, Wellness, and Wealth. Enjoy. Peace.
Hello, friends, family, all of us at the Pieces Collective, all of you who come to the Pieces Collective, all of us who are in the Pieces Collective. Hello. Happy Wednesday. So glad to see you. My name is Shannon Dale Stott, and I am your host today for Growing Abundance, Unleashing the Magic of Fall Gardening. We are going to talk about the fall. What's coming up? What can we do in preparation to garden and to harvest the land that we have? And then we have deeper conversations, even about, I don't want to spoil it for you. Surprise, surprise. There's so many things happening. I want to know where you are joining us from. Even if you are backstage right now, type in the chat where you're joining us from. Get our audience ready to talk to us, and just to show that this is going to be a conversation. Yes, we have panelists who are just a wealth of knowledge, but I want you to be sure that you have the time and the freedom to talk to our panelists. So yes, absolutely. We have people coming in from North Carolina right now. This is so lovely. Thank you so much again for joining us. So we are again here at the Pieces Collective. This is a Wisdom, Wellness and Wealth monthly series brought to you by Pieces Collective. And we are growing abundance, unleashing the magic of fall gardening. Now, we're not doing this just by ourselves. We are definitely have a panel. But before we introduce every single person on that panel, the Pieces Collective is a remarkable business committed to using creativity to help serve the needs of the community and contribute to the economic, social, and human development of women and youth and young adults. I'd like to welcome Ikrama Mohammed, Executive Director of the Pieces Collective, to ground our conversation and say hello today. Hi, Ikrama.
Okay, unmute yourself.
You did it. I mean,
Yeah, I
we
did.
knew you would get it. You always do.
How are you, Shannon?
I'm so well, so blessed to be here and part of the conversation. How are
Great
you?
to see you. I'm well, and I'm looking forward to the conversation tonight. I just want to say a few things before we get started, kind of set the table, so to speak. First of all, welcome to Growing Abundance, Unleashing the Magic of Fall Gardening. And I hope you're all well and enjoying the last days of summer. We appreciate your support of the Pieces Collective because building community is more important today than ever. With the proliferation of social media and AI, it seems like we're getting less and less social and less connected. And we come from a tradition of communal and collective systems. In fact, there is an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And so from even before we came to these shores, we worked together to help each other. And then even during time on these shores during slavery, when we were enslaved, we pooled our resources, we helped each other. People pooled their resources to buy their freedom, to help with whatever needs the community had. And we continued that tradition. In 1907, at the 12th Atlanta Conference for Negro Business Development and Cooperative Economics, W.E.B. Du Bois stated his conviction that present tendencies toward cooperative effort and wide ownership of small capital and small accomplishments among many rather than great riches among few should be fostered, and that individualistic pursuits of wealth would not help our race. So in 1914, Marcus Garvey founded the UNIA, which was one of the largest mass movements in African American history. We had the Alabama bus boycott from December 1st, 1955 through November 13th, 1956. The Freedom Quilting Bee was formed by Black women to help generate income in Alabama from 1966 all the way up until 2012. And then in 1967, Fannie Lou Hamer formed the Freedom Farm Cooperative as an agricultural cooperative founded in Sunflower County, Mississippi. She was a little disappointed with the political process and decided that we needed to do for self and buy land and share that land and benefit from it together. In the 60s, Muhammad's Economic Blueprint was founded by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam. It was also known as the National Savings Plan, and that was formed to break harmful spending habits, pool our earnings, redirect our wealth in ways that would lead to self-sufficiency. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad is also quoted as saying, our unity is more important than an atom bomb. So today, as we may be seemingly becoming less connected, we have to keep in mind that community is how we survive. It's the fabric through which we pass down our history and weave the values and traditions that secure our future. And without it, we're vulnerable to repeating past mistakes. So at the Pieces Collective, we seek to study and learn from those who have gone before us. Our mission is to honor and promote our heritage as makers, to build leadership and thriving communities through cooperative economics and education. And one of the ways we do that is by hosting these programs once a month, Wisdom, Wellness, and Wealth. This is where we invite a group of speakers and experts on a variety of topics curated to meet the needs and interests of our community. And so tonight we're blessed to have a panel of speakers who will share with us information about what I think is one of the most important topics of our day, which is growing our own food. Because there's one thing we can all agree on, that food is essential to life. So we thank the panelists for their generosity of time and willingness to share. And we thank you all for coming, and we hope you benefit and are inspired to action. Peace and love.
Farming is definitely an exercise in patience. You gotta really prep your soil and your beds so that you have a good harvest. But when that fruit comes, it's just a sweet reward.
My name is Jamila Norman, and I'm an urban farmer in the city of Atlanta.
I farm on 1.2 acres in the middle of the city where I grow and harvest organic fruits. We're planting 2 blueberries and 2 bananas, vegetables and herbs. I love potatoes. They're like jewels under the earth for me. I plant a seed, and then the magic happens on its own. Hearing the stories from my mom growing up in Jamaica on my great-grandparents' farm really planted a seed deep inside of me. Let me tell you, it's not farming if you don't get dirty. I started this journey for my family, and I love to help others discover the joys of farming and start their own gardens for their family. Let me know how many basil plants you have. Basil actually makes tomatoes grow better and have more flavor, so they're great companion plants. You got your caprese salad right here. All you need is mozzarella. Connecting with the land and sharing it with my community is my greatest passion. We're just creating some nooks of discovery and food and chill space. Every yard is different. Seeing that progress is beautiful. But with good soil, sunshine, and a little patience, anyone can be a backyard farmer.
It's everything that I've ever dreamed of. How is that possible?
I am so excited for this conversation. We often are so far removed from the land that we don't even really see it as something that is abundant to us and can be healing for us. And all the people on this panel are just like-minded as far as helping us to see the land in a different way and how we can grow as we grow things. I could wax poetically, right? Just talk about how I feel about land, but we're here to learn. So let us introduce our panelists. We have Michelle Lewis. Reverend Dr. Michelle Lewis is the founder and executive director of the Peace Garden Project. In 2013, she became the first person of color to graduate from Yale with joint master's degrees in religion and the environment. The work of the Peace Garden Project focuses on creating sustainable local food systems with working towards justice in our communities. Thank you so very, very much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Me too. We also have Diane Houston Crockett. Diane Houston Crockett is a certified health educator from the Bronx, New York. She developed a love of all things gardening from her mother and grandmother. Although those influences were there, Diane relocated frequently, which prevented her from pursuing her passions until one day, about 25 years ago, she was asked by her landlord to take care of her garden after she moved. After that, Diane was hooked and has been gardening ever since. Diane, welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for the introduction. I'm very happy to be here. I can't wait to get started.
Me too. Thank you for being here. We also have, surprise, surprise, Ikrama Muhammad. In 2018, she founded and is the current executive director of the Pieces Collective, a 501c3 nonprofit organization that serves as a platform for local makers and artists to showcase their work and uses a portion of the revenue generated to launch community programs and provide experiential learning. Did you know that prior to founding the Pieces Collective, Ms. Mohammed was employed by the Washington Post as an advertising accountant executive, managing $1 million accounts lists in the tourism and travel department? I didn't know that, and I'm happy to know it now. Hi, Akrama.
Hi.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We have Joy Howard. Joy Howard is a founding member and acting executive director of the En Bloom Collective. In Bloom Collective, En Bloom Collective. The En Bloom Collective is cultivating whole person wellness spaces that support and promote climate smart agriculture and products. Joy believes that innovation in agriculture is a powerful vehicle for wealth generation, generational healing, life skill development, and environmental stewardship. Welcome, Joy.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. And I'm glad you, the professional, were reading that because there were a lot of tongue twisters in there and you handle it well. I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thank y'all for having me today.
Of course, of course. And we have Anna Mohammed. Anna Mohammed currently serves as the Food Access Director for NOFA Mass. The programs that the Food Access Program covers are the Youth Agricultural Scientist Program at Home City Housing, the Open Pantry Community Garden Project, and smaller projects in the Boston and Springfield area. Anna and her husband, Keith Mohammed, live in Springfield, Maryland, and they are market gardeners in the Mason area of Springfield. Welcome, Anna.
Wow. Thank you so much. I am so excited and honored to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversation, and I really appreciate the invitation.
Me too. I'm glad you are here. Last but not least, we have Brother Akil Rahim. Akil K. Rahim is the owner and Chief Learning Officer of AC Learning Design Studios, providing education and training for both professional and personal development. He is also the founder and director of the Mobile George Washington Carver Ventures Institute for that provides innovative, integrated approaches and ventures in STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math education for pre-K to middle school families, community centers, and schools. Welcome, Brother Akil.
Greetings of peace and thank you and welcome to everybody. Glad to be here.
We are so happy that everyone is here. So this is the first question. It goes for everyone, including you in the chat. If you're in there, just think about this question. See if you can move your fingers and answer it. Here is your question for everyone. What was the first thing you grew from a seed, and what did you learn? What was the first thing you grew from a seed, and what did you learn? Anyone can start this one off.
Okay, well, I'll start. It was sunflowers.
Okay.
Sunflowers, because they were easy to grow. And what I did notice is that I had to be very careful. This is before I became enlightened. I used Miracle Grow, and these sunflowers got so big, and the heads were so huge. And so since then, I've learned that you have to be careful with fertilizers and what your ultimate goal is and what you want the plant to look like. And so Miracle Grow will make things grow big, but that's not always necessarily good for the plant or good for the environment.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take that too. My first thing was probably tomatoes, and because I think there's this like widely known thing that tomatoes are easy, start there, and I don't know that that's necessarily true. I mean, I think everything takes a certain amount of work, so that's kind of one thing that I learned. But I also don't like tomatoes, so we grew all these tomatoes, And then I, was like, why? So then I realized you grow what you like and grow what you're going to, eat, or people that you are going to serve. And then I really quickly understood the parallels between a seed and a small human being, or a small, animal. And they really do need care, constant care and nurturing and inputs and all the things in order for it to thrive. And it really, my kids were younger at the time, and it really helped me to understand the connection between all life. And so I learned a lot from those tomato plants.
Nice.
So I'll say I don't really remember the first thing I grew myself. I think maybe it was lettuce, the first seed I planted specifically. But we had we had a garden plot when we lived in Hawaii when we were small children, and we grew sugar cane. And so my earliest memories are going with my family to our garden plot where we would cut sugar cane, and like we would snack on sugar cane, and we had banana tree in the backyard, and we grew mangoes, and our neighbors had mangoes, and we would like sit around in the summer and just eat fruit by the bagfuls because there was so much of it. But yeah, I think maybe lettuce was the first thing I planted because I was like, oh, this only takes so many days. It was
Quick. Yes.
Mine is a little comedic. In terms of a seed, because I used to kill plants, they would dry up. My mother was wondering, why are they crunchy? My husband talked me into gardening, and to prove him wrong, he actually got some seedlings for us, some tomatoes, peppers. I didn't think they were going to grow. And to shut him up, I said, okay, I'll do this. So I think the one thing that I did from seed was carrots, and I was amazed that they survived. That was the thing that shocked me, and I realized, oh, hey, there's something here. But I also look at the seed as an idea, and the idea oftentimes is a seed that's planted somewhere. He planted that idea that, hey, you can do this, even though I didn't think I could. So my gardening and farming journey, I'm grateful for my husband for that.
Wonderful. I think my first thing I grew from a seed was a tomato, because I do like tomatoes, and most of the gardens I've been to, everybody's growing tomatoes, so I figured that would be a good place to start. And what I learned was gardening is hard work. It's kind of twofold. I learned that it's hard work, and when I'm in the garden, I always think of the ancestors. I always think, wow, this is backbreaking work, and I can stop and go get a drink or say I'll come back tomorrow, and they weren't able to do that. So I always keep that in mind. But the other part is and how easy it is. So it seems like a contradiction, but how easy. It's just like, I take this seed, I put it in the ground, I cover it, I water it, make sure it gets sun, and God does the rest. So I think it's both easy and difficult at the same time. But I have to say, Diane, the first year we grew our garden, we had this huge, you must have snuck some Miracle Grow, because we had this huge sunflower in the middle of our garden, and I loved it. I mean, it must have been about 6'5" or something like that. And it just towered over the garden. And I used to always say, wow, the sunflower is just looking over and looking after the garden for us. So I enjoyed that. Came back 2 years.
Well, where we garden with Umoja has the best soil. The best soil.
Yeah.
So I think that has a lot to do with it. No Miracle Grow, I promise.
Well, one of the first things that we grew with a group of 4 and 5-year-old Head Start kids were some sunflower seeds in a cup. And to both my surprise and their surprise, it grew 3 feet and actually bloomed.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Gardening is a miracle.
It is. It is. I want to, okay, so Sister Anna, you said idea. That's what it was. You said a seed is an idea. And I would love to start this conversation with all of you talking a little bit about how to start seeing land in a different way as something that we can harvest. I walked outside because, of course, I'm thinking about us talking today. I walked outside in my own yard and I thought, oh, I've always just thought of this place, this back grass as my backyard. I never thought of it as a plot of land. And that distinction or switch, gave me so many ideas. So I'm wondering, how can you talk about how we can start looking at land, our yards, as in a different way, so we can start thinking about food and community?
I was going to say, I think, looking at our, just our food system in general differently. Like right now, we're like, I need something. Let me go to the grocery store and get it. And what about when that's not an option? And, this is something my husband and I go back and forth all the time. Like the grass is a plant. You still have to take care of that plant and, nurture it and cut it and do all the things, but it doesn't produce anything, but more work. But if you can turn it into something, even if it's cover crops or cover crops, still help draw down carbon and can clean the air. And so even if you don't want to grow food, there's other ways to use that land. And I think that all also connects to the narrative around agriculture. A lot of us have for historical kind of moved away from it for good reason. And also we were barred, from it. We were intentionally shut out and it was taken, from us. And so, so we have, without, I'm not going to get too far up on the platform. But, I think there's a lot of reasons why we think of land the way that we do. And so, but I think that there's a movement to reconnect with our roots, literally and figuratively with learning our past. So I feel it, and so I think a lot of us are rethinking our relationship with land.
Yeah, I agree with you, Joy. When I look at a plot of land, I look at it as a blank canvas. So I look at it in the sense that the location, what kind of soil it has, and what the potential is. And with that, you always start from there. Some plants like light, some plants don't like light. Most vegetables love light. And so you have to make sure it's in the ideal place to have that type of success as far as something that's going to be productive. So location, location, location. If I see a nice sunny location, I'm going to go for it if I have the time and the knowledge. Another thing is that you have to know what was there before. What was the land used for? Are there anything that potentially dangerous in the area? So knowing your location is very, very important as to what you're planting and what's going to grow. So if I see a good plot of land and I'm very interested in what it looks like underneath. And so with that, it's almost like getting to know someone. You're getting to know the land and what the history is and what kind of composition the soil is made from. And from there, with some knowledge, you can have a very successful garden.
So, you can go ahead.
Oh, no, please go right ahead, sis.
So I was going to say, when I think about land and land access, some of the work that I do with the Peace Garden Project is education for faith communities, because faith communities, if you were to put together all the land holdings of all the faith communities, right, whether they were Jewish or Christian or Muslim or Baha'i or you name it, and you put all those together in this country, those communities would be the largest landholder. And so working with those communities to help them understand Like, you can grow food on your property. And, talking with people and helping them understand, when people are like, oh, I was thinking about planting some flowers, like, oh, you should plant edible flowers, and so thinking about what are all the things that are edible, like, so instead of planting just ornamentals, right, really helping people to see their yards and the land holdings that they have, singular or collectively, as places that can be used to really work on these issues of food security in their communities. Because so many people don't have access to the land in a way we might have traditionally had access, depending on, and then when I think about different ways of knowing and understanding, and even and in being in communion, and with the land, right? There's some cultures that say, we don't believe in actually owning land. We believe that the land is for everyone, right? And so working with these communities to help them find people who want to grow, to help them encourage people to grow, to help them partner with farmers who've even been displaced from their own lands. Like, that's really, really important. And that's some of the work that we do at the Peace Garden Project. And so whenever I see land, I'm like, oh, how is this being used? And is there a way that this can be used for the benefit of the community?
Mhm.
I would love to even continue. Sister Anna, did you have more to say? Because I would love to hear.
Oh, I think Diane and Dr. Lewis really summed up some of my thoughts on land access and the community of holding land. Because we can think individually. When I look at my garden plot, I also think about the other gardeners in the area and how we have learned to pool our resources through sharing seedlings, seeds, even techniques. And then when you think about the faith-based communities sharing that land together, we've embarked on that here in Springfield between a couple of churches and my local mosque number 13, to take the land that we have and make it accessible to everyone. And then I really appreciate Diane's comments on, well, what's happening under that soil? Do we know what was there? Do we have any idea of the history? And together, we found that if we work together, somebody has a piece of that history in the city to help us figure out, is that safe to use? So for me, the land, it's community. It's building community while we are also feeding one another.
Mm-hmm. I want us to just hit that nail on the head, continue down that path. Oh, go ahead. Yes. Ikrama, you were going to say something.
Well, I was going to follow up on what everyone has said. Mm-hmm. Yeah, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think my connection is a little shaky, but we'll push through. I was just going to kind of comment on what everyone said in terms of your question about how do we get people to look at the land differently as well. I think Joy hit on it in terms of a history. And so we're trying to escape that. We don't want to, we see it as hard work. We see that relationship with land as a reminder of the toil and the struggle and the suffering that we went through. And then we feel like, we're getting away from that. We don't want to deal with that anymore. And I think we have to reintroduce, as Brother Akil was saying, particularly to our children at a young age, this relationship with the land and with the earth, which the earth provides everything that we need to sustain ourselves. It provides food, clothing, and shelter. So to have this disdain or this dislike of the earth is not in our best interest going into the future. And as Brother Akil pointed out, probably the excitement that those young people had when they put the seeds in and it grew, working, seeing something that you do with your hands, getting them excited about that, and then connecting to the reality of this is how we feed ourselves. We should all, even though we might not all want to be farmers full time, but we should all want to be able to make good use of a land, even if it's a pot on your balcony.
Yeah, let me pick up on that, because When working with the kids and the students, we actually, have them look at land, alternative ways of looking at land, because we have this motto: we go from the test tube to the container. So we have them do a lot of container gardening because their backyards either don't have the space that they need, nor do they have the tools, to do a lot of gardening. So we do a lot of container gardening, uh, and on the school property, we do have access to spaces of land that they can actually go from the test tube to the container and to the plots out back of the school. So we have them see land in various kinds of ways.
And I would just add one more thing about with working with children is that it doesn't reinforce this culture of instant gratification that we have come so accustomed to. It takes time. It takes time for things to grow, and you have to. You don't. I think you said it was easy, and our part is easy, but there's this whole network and ecosystem that's working under the soil, above us, around us, and so it's a science. It's a lot. It's science, y'all. And
Yeah,
pay attention. So it teaches so much. It's really is an infinite well of in a lifelong learning experience.
yeah, and that actually becomes a part of the excitement, trying to predict
Yeah.
and guess how long is it going to take to go from seed to various growths of the plant.
Yes. Talk to me about, you were talking just now, Joy, about the science, right? There's a lot to it. There's all of these components that help this seed grow. And in that thought, and the thought that Akrama was talking about, as far as, yes, what from the land we can get our food, we can also get our clothes, we can also get abundance that we don't even think about anymore. I want those thoughts to connect around community. So if you all could talk about in this idea that we are in this idea of, okay, I'm looking at the land differently. Maybe I can grow things. Great. But I'm not going to need all these peppers. I don't need a whole bunch of peppers. So never mind, I won't grow anything. Or I'll just grow one type of thing over here because it's the only thing that I like. We're starting to think about me, right? But what you all are talking about is stretching beyond the self. Can you talk about that?
Right. So at the Peace Garden Project, we say we don't just grow healthy food, we grow healthy community. You'll find it on our website, and if there's printed material, you'll find it on our printed material. And so it started, how it even all started is there was a semester when I was in graduate school where I was just a broke graduate student, right? Like I didn't have money. I was just working two jobs. I'd left a very adult life to go back to school. So I had a mortgage and an apartment and a car note. And someone suggested I go to social services to get help. And I went, rode my bike over there, and they told me I made about $50 too much money to get food stamps. And I was like, well, what do I do? Do I work less? She was like, no, you'd only qualify for about $20 a month. And then she suggested I have a baby and told me about everything I would qualify for if I had this baby. And I was like, what? I went home and I called my parents and asked my parents for money, which they readily gave me. But I realized that I had a safety net that a lot of people don't have. And I learned that I worked with some students who were food insecure that summer when I was doing my research. And that's how, so I joke and I say I had a baby. It's called the Peace Garden Project, that I actually did have a baby that year, but that's when the seed was planted. And so purposefully, everything that we grow, unless we have a surplus, goes to families in the community in need. We allow people to self-identify their need. We set up community work days so people can't come to us and be like, I want to have my own plot. We have community work days where we work the land together so that we actually get to know our neighbors. So we're building community, and that leads us into conversations about the isms and the phobias and all the stuff that people carry with them that they often don't talk about unless they begin to feel comfortable, right? enough with you to be able to share those things. And so we use food as the entry point to having these larger discussions that included discussions around environmental justice as well. Because lack of access to food in a community is an environmental justice issue, which is a larger conversation. But so that's how we build community, and yeah, it's been very successful in those places where our gardens are located.
Mhm.
The it's so important to build community with the gardens we're working with at Tapley Court Apartments, otherwise known as the Tapley Garden and the Open Pantry Garden. The youth, they manage those gardens, and we're facilitators as the adults. And so we facilitate the trainings around soil health, soil testing, building up the fungal to bacterial ratio in the soil, organic growing practices. But all the food is given to the families that live in and around the Tapley apartments and around the open pantry social services. So in that, what the youth, they learn a couple of things. Of course, they learn the science of growing, the science of growing organic food, soil science, but they also learn about the importance of being a caretaker of the community. Because as we're giving that food out, for many now, they see where their food comes from. They begin to see the importance of having access to healthy food and who has it and who doesn't. And they see their role as caretakers, their role in developing self determination around what they're eating, that they do not have to settle for what's left in the community. They can create a whole new paradigm shift. They can create a whole new reality around the type of food that's in the community. And like the gardens that Dr. Lewis mentioned, all of our gardens are communal growing spots. There is no family plots. We all work it together. We all harvest together, and we all share in that bounty of conversation. And for a lot of the youth that we're blessed to work with, for many of them now, the garden is a place of safety, a place of peace, where they otherwise don't have that. And they see themselves as the peacemakers. They see themselves as the guardians of the community, of their parents, their grandparents, their siblings, just by the simple act of bringing food to someone's front door. So yeah, for watching them grow into that, they're the future. And so if they can see themselves as community builders, our future is pretty much secure.
Mhm.
And I would add that a lot of people, food is brings people together. And I know Schools in Bloom, we're stewarding a garden that the school has a high Black and Hispanic population. And so one of the things that we're planning is tastings and demonstrations where, we can take that food and turn it into a meal or, a side dish or something like that, but incorporate recipes from other cultures, so that people can try it out and, and bond that way. And then the other thing is there are a lot of roles and jobs that are associated with growing food. Like I said, talked about turning that food into something else. So that would be chefs. There's human resources, even if it's volunteers, like coordinating who's going to be where and who's going to be what. And then now with technology, tracking the harvest and, all the things associated with that. So there's just a lot of jobs and roles that it takes to keep a community or garden thriving. So there's so much that can bring people together.
Absolutely. I want to just take a moment to say welcome to the people in the chat. We see you. If you have questions, please ask. This is definitely a conversation, and we are so glad to have you and to continue this conversation with you. Will you all, you've mentioned, Joy, you were like, I'm going to get off my soapbox. And I was like, no, you can stay on your soapbox. We're all here for the soapbox.
Place the soapboxes.
Right. I'd love you all just to touch on, if you can, food deserts and what they are and what they mean for a community.
Well, I can start with that. Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Kwame, you want to go? Okay. Well, okay. So as far as a food desert is a place where you can't get food, basically. lots of food deserts are in urban areas. We do have some even in more rural areas. So it's a place where food is scarce or not available. And so the fact that if you train people, you know what they say, if you build it, they'll come. So the fact that if you're in a position to share that knowledge of how to grow food, where it comes from, people will have more of an ownership, not only of what they eat, but even as on their own lives, their own health, because fresh food is healthy. Fast food is not healthy. And so in food deserts, they have lots of fast foods and pizza joints, but there's no place where you can get fresh produce. And if you do get fresh produce, is through the roof. And so eliminating food deserts is a very good endeavor. If you have the capability to do that, then that's what you should be able to do.
Yeah.
And I, oh, go ahead.
Well, food deserts, I was thinking about this and just happened to hear on the radio the other day that there are 33 million people in the United States that are food insecure or that live in food deserts. And they technically describe food deserts as a place where a third of the people live quarter a mile from a grocery store. There's no grocery store in their neighborhood, or 30% of the people lack access to a car to get around or to get to a grocery store, or a certain percentage of the people live at or below the poverty line. And I think that in addition to changing our mindset about the earth and growing, we need to change our mindset about caring about each other. And community gardens do that. Because I was thinking, why in the world are that many people food insecure and we have all this land? 30% of people in Baltimore City live in food deserts, you know? And you think, why is that the case? You know, why we have all that land, we have empty lots, we could just grow food, you know, but we're not necessarily thinking in that way. Why are people starving when there's abundance of land on the planet? And it's because a system of thinking that is individualistic and materialistic. And so part of, a small part of changing that attitude, I think, is what you all are doing, which is having these small community gardens where people begin to understand the benefit of working with each other to nurture this land, and then the benefit of growing healthy food and sharing it and tasting it because it tastes delicious. I just had a tomato that I picked out of the garden the other day. I was like, I don't even usually eat tomatoes just like that. I put them in my salad, but my mother said, you should taste this tomato. I said, okay. And it was delicious, right out of the garden. We washed it, of course. But I mean, these are the things that we have to begin to think about, because we live in this country that is supposedly plentiful. And we think that this is mainly for people who are not doing well or below the poverty line. But I don't know if you've noticed, because I have, going into the grocery stores, and those shelves are not stocked like they used to be. Part of that may be, due to the pandemic, et cetera. But I noticed that you used to never see any kind of empty shelving in any grocery store, particularly out here where we live in Columbia.
I'm going to give us a moment right here. Just if you have a thought, please hold on to it, write it down, because as far as where we are, this would be a great time for Diane's and Sister Ikrama's video.
You know, my favorite thing to grow.
Say again.
My favorite thing to grow is potatoes.
We
I
had a bumper
love
crop
growing
this
potatoes.
year.
I love, the fun of having to dig down and then you find them, you find a whole cluster of them. It's just so much fun.
It is fun.
And Shannon, if it's all right, I'd like to add that we often, when we have this conversation about food deserts, I like to also talk about food mirages. And because in so many communities, there are grocery stores, but people can't afford what's in the stores.
Right.
And so, which raises another, like another conversation about socioeconomics in a community, and how we make sure that people do have what they need in order to survive. And because here we've got lots of grocery stores, but it's also a tourist area, and so the prices are, if
Very
you have
expensive.
transportation, you can drive 45 minutes across the bridge to Columbia and spend a fraction of what you might spend on the Outer Banks in North Carolina for groceries, because it's a tourist area. And even in the flyers that one of the grocery stores used to put out, where they had the sales, they would say at the bottom in teeny tiny print, like, prices might not be valid, like on the Outer Banks. So they had a sale flyer for everybody but like local people. And so there are food mirages, right? So where people can see the food, but they just can't get to it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So
Exactly.
growing a garden can give people a sense of empowerment and also control over their finances as well. It's a lot less expensive to buy a pack of seeds than it is to buy a pound of apples, for example. It's produce is very expensive for a selfish reason. That's why I started growing strawberries, because they're through the roof in the supermarket, and they have lots of pesticides in them if you buy them from a commercial, supermarket, instead of saying maybe a farmer's market, which can be even more expensive sometimes than supermarkets. So learning how to garden is giving people a sense of empowerment and control. The challenge is to change people's mind about gardening. A lot of people don't want to get especially our people, with the fingernails. They don't want to sweat. They don't want to get dirty. They're afraid of bugs. So it's a lot of work to change people's mindset, and that a little sacrifice will give you such a big reward in the end.
Diane, when you talk about the fingernails and the dirt and the bugs, that was all me right there.
Me
that
too.
was me. I was the one. I was the sister to get her nails done every 2 weeks. Sister Karma, we remembered. I always had that nail done, and the dirt and the bugs. I wasn't dealing with that, and I told my husband I don't do that. But Diane, I'm so glad you mentioned that the cost factor, how you do save money. We do use that oftentimes in our discussions with the youth and with their families of saving money. But I wanted to lift up a point, and Dr. Lewis really brought this to mind. We have food deserts, we have food mirages, and we also just have straight up food apartheid, where we're segregated by zip code in terms of the food that they allow us to have. And notice I'm saying the word allow. And Diane, you're absolutely right. With gardening, there is a level of empowerment, because you're saying, I don't have to settle for what you decide to give me. I don't have to settle for the Popeyes, the KFC, the Chester's Chicken and Pride, the McD's or McDeath, and then all the other grinder shops. They call them grinders up here in Massachusetts. Along the way, I don't have to settle for that. I can create my own reality around that. So definitely we face all of those, whether it's a food desert, food mirage, straight up food apartheid. It's definitely a revolutionary act to be able to grow your own food and to help other families to do the same thing and work in community and in collaboration, so that you create a whole different ecosystem and you see something different in your community.
So Shannon, if I could throw out a question. So fall's coming. So what are we growing and how we grow it?
Good question.
add on to that.
Excellent question.
Growing and how are we growing it? And as you're discussing this, because Sister Anna, you were talking about you called it McDeath, I think. But I remember that all of you were talking about food as medicine, food as medicine. So yes, as we're talking about what fall is coming, what are you growing? How are you growing it? How are you keeping healthy? Why are you growing it? Would be my add-on.
Well, here in Springfield, as it's getting, we have a shorter season, so it's always a sprint when we're growing here in the Northeast. I'm right outside of Hartford, Connecticut, and about an hour and some change northeast of Boston. So it's always a sprint before it gets cooler. So I can every tomato that comes into my present because I'm trying to hold on to that summer feeling. But one of the things as we shift out our beds to fall beds, which we will be doing more in earnest in September, you always want to give back to the earth. That's the first and foremost. The earth does a lot for us during that growing season, whether you're in zone 5 or zone 4. You may have a longer growing season. I love my brothers and sisters in North and South Carolina who can grow a lot longer than me. But you always want to give back. And so we spend a lot of time with fall soil healthcare. That's what I like to call it, giving the soil back some vitamins that we took out, whether we are undersowing cover crops with our tomatoes, whether we're mulching, whether we've done some side dressings. These are all things to give back to the earth. That's the first and foremost. And I tell you, the youth have grown accustomed to lettuce and Swiss chard and beets. Actually, a couple of them asked for beets. That was shocking. And the one crop that folks are looking forward to, and those of our brothers and sisters in the Puerto Rican community are looking forward to the harvest of the gandules in November. We planted those early spring, and by about November, we'll see these beautiful flowers, and then the peas come from that. So all that time, we're really giving back to the earth and making sure she has what she needs before she goes to bed for us up here for the winter.
Yeah. Well, I think this is going to be our first time growing fall plants, right, Diane? Because we real hop on the spring and we get a lot of good vegetables, and then we kind of shut it down until next year. But this year, we decided that we were going to strive to grow some fall plants. And the frost date for this area is November 3rd. The projected first frost is November 3rd. So they say you can go back to the date of maturity on whatever plant you want to grow, and that'll tell you when the last time you can put them in. So I think I found some about 60-day maturity plants like carrots and lettuces, things of that nature that we can begin to grow. I love carrots too, spinach, broccoli. So those are some of the things that we're going to strive to grow this fall. We'll let you know.
Yeah, the objective is to get them in, but knowing when to do it. It's so hot here. And we have a lot of little pests flying around that you have to be very aware of. Sometimes it's good to overlap, plant the ones that you want to harvest later in the fall season. Start them now, and so as the weather cools, you can put them in, hopefully in September. But it's very difficult with this global warming. We don't know what to expect from day to day. And so I think being aware of where you live and looking at weather patterns is another way in which you can connect with the weather and with the soil. I like the fact that Sister Anna said about giving back to the earth, preparing it for the fall season, preparing that transition. Sometimes it's good to check the pH of the soil, especially since it's being depleted. You want to make sure that your soil is healthy, and you want to make sure it's the right type of pH for what you're trying to plant. And so a lot of people don't even think about testing the soil. I know even with pneumonia, a soil has been so great, you just kind of take it for granted. As long as it's growing well, it's fine. But we also have to look at the plants closely and see if they're starting to falter. And then that's when we need to start amending the soil.
Yeah, and we'll be growing much of the same, lots of leafy greens, but we also grow hydroponically,
Hmm.
and which has been so our gardens right now are more teaching gardens, but growing hydroponically, we do get a bit of a longer summer growing season. I mean, sometimes it stays so warm that we'll just pull plants that even are still producing because it should be we should be moving on to something else. Um,
Hmm.
so we'll probably pull some plants this year that likely would still produce, as
Hmm.
long as we let them produce, just to give the earth a rest a little bit. But we'll plant some cover crops. We're installing a handicapped accessible garden right now, which has
Oh.
been in the works for a while. So we'll likely plant a little less so that we can focus more on finishing the install of this
Hmm.
handicapped accessible garden.
Hmm.
Dr.
Dr.
Michelle,
Michelle,
can you
oh,
can you
Dr.
say a
Michelle,
little bit
what
more?
whoa, we're doing a thing. I'm gonna take over, but don't forget what you're gonna say, Ikrama, because I want to show. I have two things. One, we're gonna show your video, Dr. Michelle, and two, if you could, after the video, just explain a little bit about what growing hydroponically means. But first, your video.
I'm Michelle Lewis, founder and executive director of the Peace Garden Project, and right now we're at Roanoke Island Presbyterian Church, which is the site of when it's finished. It'll be a fully handicapped accessible garden, and I'm really, really proud of this partnership that we have with this church because churches are one of the largest landholders in the country. So if we put all the property together from all the churches and faith communities, they'd be the largest landholders. We're helping to transform communities by gaining access to these lands that these churches have and helping them put in gardens.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you. But we use towers. I mean, there are a lot of ways that you can grow hydroponically. You can do it so that it doesn't cost a lot of money. You can use like buckets and but with our tower growing with the handicapped accessible garden is all the beds are raised so that you can get right up to them, whether you're in a wheelchair or walker. We'll put in pathways so that people will be able to have like solid footing because so much, as not even as people age. I mean, my garden manager is 20, and some days she's like, "Oh man, Miss Michelle, like my back hurts or my knees hurt," and we want people to be able to do this long term, right? We want people to be able to garden well into their 70s, 80s, 90s, their hundreds, their what centenarian years is. I think that's if they want to, and so we with the exception of a bed that we've kept for itty bitties because we do like to keep a bed for small children. They're all raised to a height where you could get, if you were in a wheelchair or using a walker or something else, so you'd be able to get right up to them and you could sit down and garden and not feel like you couldn't show up in the space. So yeah, our teens and our interns help design the garden, and yeah, when it's finished and the church has graciously given us space to use, we've had a partnership with them for about 3 years now. And they came to us last year and said, why don't y'all grow something here? We'd love to have y'all grow here because the partnership was for using their space for our Youth Leadership Institute, but we actually grew on another space. So it's been, that's always, so there are folks that are out there who want to embark in these partnerships. And as we continue building it out and more of the community gets involved, we'll have, we want to really make sure that not only people who have differing physical abilities are able to come out and garden, but also differing mental abilities as well. And we do get some of those folks coming out and gardening with us, but our goal is to truly make it a safe space for folks of all abilities and all the different types of abilities that we see.
Mm-hmm. Ikrama, did you have some? Come back to us. I feel like you had an idea. You had something to say before the video.
Well, I think Dr. Michelle did explain. I wanted her to talk a little bit more about the hydroponic gardening and what that was. Share a little bit more about that with us. But
so it's grown with water.
Mm-hmm.
Water, we do add some nutrients to the water, but we've tried it, where we've tried it, with lots of extra nutrients, without lots of extra nutrients, just letting rainwater provide those additional nutrients. But I think we're going to see a movement towards more hydroponic growing. I say that because hydroponic growing does use less water resources than soil growing. Hydroponic gardens use about a third of the water. And because plants have such a availability of water to them, your growing season is shortened as well. And so I think that as we look at, what are environmentally sound practices, I think we are going to see a move toward, and you also don't have to deal with the same runoff like you might, of chemicals and things and fertilizers into, the soils, into soil system and into waterways, because it's contained. I mean, you could actually feasibly never have to dump any water out of a hydroponic tower. You just leave it, you leave it running. And the plants, I mean, we grow tomatoes in them, and we have to be very diligent, especially right now when the tomato plants are so big, because they'll go through the water in 3 days. So every 3 days, if you go to check it, you're like, oh, the tank's almost dry. We got to put water in it. Because they're just sucking it up, and they're beautiful. And that's one of the pictures in the video was Jillian at one of the towers. There were some flowers, I think, grown out of that one that were edible. And to see the looks on kids' faces when you're like, you can eat this, and then you have to be like, no, you can't eat every flower that you come across. But these you can eat. This is how you know they're edible.
I'm wondering, can we go from,
wonderful,
because what you're talking about here, and we've touched on it a little bit, is if you don't have a lot of land, right? If you don't have a lot of land. So if all of you could just give some tips and tricks and some ideas to inspire people who are really interested, but I don't have that much space. What do I do? And then we're going to expand, go to the other end. If people are like, I've done that, I'm ready to take my garden to the major next level and really involve my community, what can I do then?
Well, container growing is a beautiful thing. My mother, who has been growing for a long time and can grow anything, anywhere, has really invested in what they call grow bags. These are felt bags that you can get in any size. They're easy to move. And she has a beautiful garden in Baltimore City with these beautiful grow bags. Milk crates is another thing that you can use. You can line those milk crates with an old towel, or old sheet, or landscape fabric. You can get a couple of milk crates, and for under $20, have a nice garden. And the beautiful thing, it's portable. So if you live in an apartment and maybe you don't have any land, you can just pick that thing up and go. And I know quite a few people. I grew on that for a while, and there are certain crops I still grow in milk crates because it defeats the pests and so forth. So container gardening is a beautiful thing. And look, y'all, our front lawn is no longer a front lawn. For the last 8 years, my husband said, "Look, please grow something in there. I'm not mowing that. I'm sick of mowing that." And so now we have several beds on our front lawn, and no more mowing for him. So a lot of people are turning to that as well. So yeah, don't be discouraged. There are different techniques to get around the land access, particularly those of us who are in more densely populated areas.
Out of that, I think, just kind of start. I think, it can be intimidating. It's like, do I have the right things or, whatever, but just get a cup, put a seed in it, put it by the window and just kind of see what happens and kind of remove that fear of growing things. And then I think, and I was going to say too, Sister Anna, lots of places will donate things. Like it takes time to make these connections, but, coffee companies, they have the coffee grinds that you can use, but then also they have those burlap bags that their coffee comes in, so that could easily be a liner for those crates that you talked about. But yeah, on a larger scale, there are organizations that will give grants for different equipment and technical support or technical assistance and all kinds of things, especially for urban, what is the socially disadvantaged beginning farmers. Like there's a lot of money. Especially right now, for projects like this, partnering with churches, as has been mentioned. Also, schools have a lot of land as well. But I think, really, volunteers are great. And I think having a place for them is important, but then also having some, paid dedicated staff that can be really the backbone, of that operation. Because I saw a picture in Dr. Michelle's video where it was like save the string bean or string bean rescue or something like that. And that's a real thing because, if you don't have the hands to pull to harvest it, it's going to just go to waste on the vine. But then also, even if you do have the hands, you need a place to wash all that stuff. You need a place to pack it and, distribute it, and the transportation. Like there's a lot, involved in it. There's a lot of logistics and it's very time sensitive, especially when you're talking about fresh food, so there's just, I just keep saying there's just so much that you can learn from it. And that's why there's so many ways that people can get involved. If you want to have the cute nails and you don't want to get your, soil under your nails, then maybe you can be in the wash and pack station or coordinating with different corporations and volunteer groups on who can come in and volunteer on certain days. So there's a place for everyone, including differently abled folks, veterans, and the little kids too.
I want to like to add about going to your local cooperative extension. They have, I know in Maryland, they have a really robust program where they partner with schools. They will show you how to grow a container garden. There's also a lot of good books out there, which I would advise to read up first before you start, because if you're embarking on this grow your own journey, you need to have some knowledge. You want to know what you're doing, and you want to be able to be successful at it. So I would say the state cooperative extension, and also they can also even recommend good books for you to read on how to grow in containers and how to share that bounty with others. They have all the tools that you need.
Yeah, and I also want to offer, one of the things, because we are using some containers in one of our gardens, and they do make food grade containers. Sometimes people will get whatever they can find, but but for someone who hasn't grown before, I just want to put it out there that you can get food grade containers at Lowe's or Home Depot or wherever. so that you're not, so that you're not growing, especially if you're planning to use them long term, so
Hmm.
that you're not leaching all of the bad funky stuff from those containers into the vegetables that you're growing.
Yeah, I agree, especially plastics. You know, be very
Mhm.
careful.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna throw a little self promotion out there. We have a project called the George Washington Carver Family and Community STEAM Clubs. So if there are any people out there in the audience who want to become a part of that, uh, to do some fall gardening, you can email me and we can get you set up. Because we also like to have the kids and the families just to look at how things grow in different parts of the country or in different areas. So anybody interested, send me an email.
Mhm.
As long as Brother Akil is self-promoting, I say we watch this video. We might as well. Your video is coming up. Excellent, excellent. Well, this is actually a great segue into using gardening as a business or growing a business, pardon the pun intended, growing a business from what you're doing. And I'm wondering if you all could give the viewers just where to start if they're in a place where they're feeling like, okay, I feel like I've done this long enough for the community, for my neighbors, for myself. And now I'm maybe looking to make money growing. Where do I start? Where do I go? Joy, you mentioned grants. Where are some other, or for anybody, where are some other places that you can start growing your business?
Maybe looking at value added products. Um, and that kind of really started by accident for me because I had so much stuff and didn't know and couldn't keep it all. I had, I learned how to can and how to preserve food in different ways. And so a value added product came from that. Um, that's one way. Of course, you've got to check into your, um, whatever city or state regulation in terms of what they call cottage food businesses. But that is one way to look at what kind of value added product can I, create from this, whether it's a tea, whether it's a lotion for herbs, whether it's some kind of food item, or even a dye from a dye plant. If there's a value added that you can pull from that, the other thing too, and here in Springfield, we're pretty blessed that, from your garden, you can actually sell on the sidewalk. So it's a ghetto fabulous situation when I do it. So it's kind of comical. But I've done my own pick and pay where people will give me $10, $20. I give them the matching box and they can come into the garden and pick the things that they want. Very simple, very deeply grassroots. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just, hey, y'all, I have canned everything that I can here. Why don't you come on in? And that's a good way to kind of get started with some kind of food business that may not, require a lot of upfront capital to get started.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we've got some fee for service programming that's coming up this fall. We also have a film festival, an environmental film festival that's coming up this fall. Yes, the first annual Outer Banks Environmental Film Festival. And and so we're looking at that because as I've talked to farmers, folks who grow on large scale, more than one of them has said to me, "Oh, it's a good thing you're a nonprofit because this is a really hard way to make money." And I had once tell me, he was like, "I don't know any farmer that's not getting subsidies from the government or somewhere else." And so I think it's just really important to think about what are the ways that you can take it and turn it into something that's profitable if that's what you're looking for. And for me, that was turning the Peace Garden Project into a nonprofit, because it didn't start out as a nonprofit, but as it began to grow and as people seemed excited about it, there were a lot of entities that just wouldn't give us money. They're like, "Oh, you do really good work, but you're not a nonprofit." And so just I mean, and then you get into if you're not a nonprofit, you have to have a fiscal agent or fiscal sponsor, and then they're holding on to your money, and that can go all sorts of ways. When that happens, but that way you're in control of you're creating economic freedom, maybe not just for yourself, but for community members who um, who may be working with you as well.
Hmm.
Yeah, I would second everything that Dr. Michelle just said, because if you're really trying to, in order to the way that farming is in most of the United States and probably beyond, if you don't have a large land holding, it's really difficult to produce for the masses. And then it also, if you are able to produce for the masses, it takes a lot of other auxiliary services and a lot of other structural things, and there's just it's a very expensive endeavor. And so we've found the same thing going to a nonprofit model and getting funding based on the services that you're bringing to the community and the education that you're offering, and meeting some of the goals of your county, state, or federal local government, as community partners. But then I would also agree with Sister Anna to creating value add, because you can sell a tomato for one price, but when you add peppers and you turn it into salsa, then you can create some profit margins, and off of that. So you do have to be creative, but I think it's that land that really kind of makes it cost prohibitive for some folks. But extending the growing season by growing in a high tunnel, which is more of an indoor structure, and hydroponic, aquaponics, experimenting with some of these other ways of growing can also contribute to revenue streams.
That's super helpful, Joy. Thank you so much. We may as well go ahead and watch your videos just to see what it is, how you are doing the magic that you're telling us about.
We're here at the lighthouse. I'm here with Camila. We're dropping off the care packages that we made the other day on Martin Luther King holiday. Yes! Look.
Thank you so much for that, Joy. One of the things that ties all these videos, all the videos we've seen, we're still missing one. We're not missing it. We're gonna see it. But so far, and I expect that even in yours, Sister Anna, that there is joy. There is an emotional connection to the land. We're seeing happiness. We're seeing fun. We're seeing the hard work that Ikrama is talking about, but we're also seeing the smiles and the the growth that comes emotionally with being connected to the land. And I'd love for you all just to give us a little talk about that. What happens emotionally when we start to grow our own food, when we start to be more connected to the land?
Well, I can start. When sometimes when you don't feel like gardening, say you're tired or something like that, but you have to go in and pick some string beans, or you have to put some more enhancements into the soil. Once you get out there, and once the fresh air hits you, and once you see the fruits of your labor, you get a sense of accomplishment, and also you get a sense of calm. You're like, I was stressed before, I was tired. Now I feel better because I'm out here, in the land with the sun and the wind and the rain or whatever environment is going on at that time. And it's very, very calming. People tell you, oh, you don't feel good? Get out in the fresh air. That'll make you feel better. Well, I say get out in the garden because that will make you feel better as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. There was my mother passed away in March of 2020, and I gardened every day in that season after. It was during the pandemic. There was nothing else really going on. And when I went for my physical, despite all the stressors of like my mother died, my grandmother died, I had some crazy personal relationship stuff going on. When I went for my physical, my blood pressure was lower than it's been in my entire life. I mean, it was even lower than when I was CrossFitting twice a day and doing triathlons. And the doctor was like, "So what's different?" I was like, "I've been gardening every day." And so there's that, well, we know that there's a grounding that happens, right, when we put our feet on the earth and put our hands in the soil. But there's some very real health benefits that are emotional, that are physical, that come with growing as well.
You also can burn a lot of calories.
That's true. Yes.
Lower your blood pressure, those kinds of things.
It also brings a sense of calm. I have some very, I'm going to be real here, some very hard-nosed, hard as nails young men who would never think about having to come out in the garden, or would even think about coming in the garden. But by the time we get done with our 8-week intensive work, there's a sense of calm that comes over them. There's a sense of peace. And for some of them, it is the most calm they ever had, to the point where they don't want to leave the garden. They hate to leave the garden. I have to almost drag them out because to them, it is that calming. Someone said grounding. It's that joy when we're harvesting and they find that hidden eggplant that no one else could find, or that hidden cucumber that someone missed. It's that joy that I see in young men that have had some real rough situations. So it's that sense of calm, that grounding, that sense of peace. And so there's a whole mental aspect that you can't put a number on that, right? But you can definitely hear it in the stories. You can see it in their face. You can see it in their whole countenance.
I bet. How much does everybody want to bet that there's calm in Sister Anna's video that we're going to see now? I knew it. I knew we'd find calm in there. As we are slowly wrapping up, I would love, we've touched on it, but when we are talking about gardening, getting back on this soapbox, can you all talk about what should be going through our minds as far as environmental justice, as far as justice in general, when we are thinking about gardening, planting, sowing seeds, these types of things?
Well, I think that connects with what I was going to say before. I think being in the garden just really helps to, center you in your place in this world, and because insects will come and they will do their thing, and they don't care that that's your garden, or they don't, they want to eat it, and that's the end of it. And so you can only have but so much control. And I think that you want to some people may be inclined to, whip out some pesticide, or something like that. But there's ways to, have harmony, in a garden between all of the different elements and things like that. I was going to say something else, but I think I lost the original question.
Justice, environmental justice.
Yeah, right. And so it makes us, we're all a part of this thing, and one part or one person isn't more important than the other. And we have a responsibility to ourselves and to each other, for our community, for our children, to take care of each other and ourselves. And I think, I think, the environment is quiet, but it's not, right? If you're listening, if you're paying attention, it will tell you what it needs and what it doesn't like. It was amazing, I think, during the pandemic, when, there just wasn't as much cars on the road, and not as much, pollution and noise traffic and all of that. Like, the environment was living its best life, literally. It was like, yeah, y'all stay inside. I'm over here, healing and doing my thing. So yeah.
There's a sense of healing too in that.
Yeah.
When we talk about soil science and soil health, I always tell the youth, we're healing the soil, and we're healing our community, and we're healing each other. And the whole concept of, from our indigenous family, not to take so much from the soil, to make sure you always give back to the soil, give back to each other. In terms of environmental justice, I mean, just think of this, and I'll put this as a question. What if everyone on our block, on our street, we all had gardens? Wouldn't the quality of that air change just a little bit? Wouldn't the heat issues, and many of us who live in, like, the Bostons, the Baltimores, the LAs, we live in a heat dome because it's a lot of concrete. But what if we created these green spaces through gardens? Wouldn't we change some of that temperature where we're not boiling so much? So these are things, when we talk about taking back the community or healing the community, I'd rather use that term. It's all a healing, and we heal Mother Earth at the same time as we heal each other.
I think we as a people we've done a lot of damage. And when you get to communities of color, and you look at what's been done to us as far as, the larger government, they put you in places that are not beneficial to you environmentally. There's a lot of pollution. There's things that people put, like dumps and all kinds of things that contaminate the earth. I think also that when people learn about gardening and learn about growing, they'll think of all kinds of ways in which to even the score, getting more things back into the community. For example, there's a lot of vacant lot in cities. Why not work with local officials, congressmen, city council people, the mayor, to turn these places into green spaces, and perhaps maybe even a community garden? So I think once we start taking back the land and using it for better, as instead of harming it, I think that that will even the score for color people who are disenfranchised, because we're the ones that are living in the worst type of area.
With kids and older youth, it's like learning what it means to protect the environment becomes organic. They automatically start to learn that just by taking care and growing a garden. I think that's one of the really, really beneficial pieces of getting them involved. You don't just teach taking care of the environment, they learn just by doing it.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
wondering,
And
just
I
for
think
all of, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry about my internet, but I think that food is life, and we often think about gardening and the like as a hobby or something nice to do, and it is my happy place. I'm most peaceful most of the time when I'm in the garden. But food is life, and we have to have a connection to that. We have to control that part of life that we're taking in. One of the things that we have to understand is the food process that we're going through. I don't know if anybody's seen the movie Poison on Netflix, but we take for granted that our food system is safe. And they'll tell us
Mhm.
that our food system is the safest in the world, but that's not necessarily so. And if we want to secure our communities and our children, then we have to take responsibility and begin to learn about community gardening and planting and food as medicine. The prevalence of childhood diabetes, all of these things come from processed foods and the sugars and everything in the food. So, I mean, I think that gardening is a way to heal a lot of our problems and ills. It teaches, like I used to tell my children all the time when I wanted them to do something, it builds character. They're like, yeah, I know, right? It builds character. That's what all adults say. But gardening really does, because you have to be accountable. You have to be patient. You have to, be committed to it. And then there's a great joy in it. So I think it's something that we should pass on to our children and each other, and uh, build those community gardens. Every block should have a community garden where people come together and work on it, and it'll change the environment physically, but it also will change the environment emotionally and through relationships as well.
Right. And I think that gardens really do provide spaces for all people when we make them that way. You know, when
Mm.
we're intentional about it. And you all have said it beautifully. They provide green space in our communities. They provide spaces of healing and spaces for relaxation and rejuvenation. But they also provide spaces for fun. Um, and which, if you're having a good time while you're doing the work, because sometimes it just feels like, I don't know, my garden manager loves to pull a weed. But pulling weeds is work, and everybody's not everybody's favorite thing, right? And but I mean, when you're there and you're with community, and environmental justice really is about um, making sure that our world, that everyone has a just space in the world, and that we're all able to experience like health and wellness and the fullness of those things in our communities, right? That it's not, that health and wellness and um, clean water is not just for the wealthy, right? Healthy food's not just for the wealthy, that it's for all of us.
Ooh, on that
And it's
note,
something we can
friends,
control.
do it, Akrama. Nope, you do it better.
No, I was just going to say it's something that we can control. We don't have to ask, well, to a certain extent. You can, if you have a plot of land, if you have a backyard, you don't have to ask permission. You don't have to vote on it or any of those things. It's something that we can come together and control and take action on ourselves. But you do it best, Shannon.
The it is saying thank you so much. Thank you so very much to each of you for being here. Wow. We don't get to have these conversations enough. There we talk about, oh, I'm gonna plant this and I'm gonna do that with this little pot, or I got this plant and I'm sticking it in my window, and when it dies, too bad. But it goes beyond planting. It goes beyond keeping a plant in your house. It really goes into bringing community together, being sustainable in ourselves, and understanding that the land is here. It's Mother Earth. I love this conversation about giving back to Mother Earth what it has provided for us. And you all have provided so much. I hope you in the chat watching now and later have gained so much from the Mother Earthness of this panel. Thank you for being here. If you liked what you saw, if you enjoyed yourself, please come back to Wisdom, Wellness, and Wealth events.